Perhaps you're familiar with the song, "Time Keeps on Ticking, Ticking, Ticking into the Future." I want to talk about time today. The Greeks had two words for time. They had chronos and kairos. So we're going to talk about both of them. Chronos, from which we get chronicle and chronological time, is the kind of time that is forward-moving and linear and measured and ticking. It's quantitative time. It is the time that we measure with clocks and watches and calendars. It is an understanding that life moves forward from point A to point B to point C, and so on and so forth. And so we are born, and we learn to talk, and we learn to walk, and then we go to school, and then we graduate from school, and then we begin some work in our lives, and maybe we partner up, and then through that partnering up, we have little children, and we raise those little children, and we go through the same process with them, and we launch them into the world, and then we look at our spouse and go, "Who are you?" And then we try to work out. Time goes forward in chronological ways. That's one way of understanding time. But there's another. And the Greeks understood this, and this is kairos, which literally means fullness or opportune moment. This is when chronological time seems to stop, or maybe we are stopped in our tracks. It's what the philosophers and the mystics call deep time, when we touch the depths of life, and we realize the more to life. And in some ways, we are touched with the grace of God. Those moments, it seems that time stands still, and for a brief and often fleeting moment, we see and we know and we understand. And it's like we're saying to God, I get it, I finally get it. And then just as quickly, it slips away. We live our lives in chronos, but we are fed and sustained and transformed by kairos. But we have to learn and we have to practice being open to kairos. We have to learn to pause and to reflect and ponder life's meaning. We have to learn to savor the experiences when we're going through them, when they're happening. We have to recognize the opportunities when they're right before us. We have to stay present to the challenges that are often a part of these moments. And then we have to integrate what we have seen, what we have come to know, and what we have learned into the future of our lives. But sadly, as my mentor likes to say, too many of us are skimming over the surface of the depths of the life we're living. Too many of us are staying on the surface of life and not touching down into the depths. One of our core values at Westside is living contemplatively, and we're going to talk about that today because living contemplatively means in part recognizing kairos, the fullness of time, the opportunities present throughout our lives. And transitions, which are notoriously challenging and difficult, are often those moments when the deeper life bubbles up. And we have an opportunity to be aware of what's always true, what's always happening, in ways that almost nothing else can. During transitions, if we make space for them, we can touch the depths of life and receive what the depths would have to offer us. So take the experience of sending a child off to his or first day of school. Some of us have done that. Now that, in some ways, is just another step, right? It's just another step from point B to point C in chronological time, but anybody who's been through that experience probably knows there's a lot more going on in that moment below the surface. On the surface, it's just the thing that we do in our culture, right? But there is a change afoot in that moment as parents hand over the larger part of education and socialization to an institution. and step aside, inviting the larger community into the formation of their child's life. Ritual elder Jim Clark writes that from this point on, raising our child is now a collaborative effort, no longer limited to the home environment. For the child's part, he or she will be introduced to a larger community of friends and acquaintances who will, for better or worse, influence his or her values and happiness, and the child will never be the same. I'd argue neither will the parents or the grandparents. And right below the surface, there's the opportunity to make space for grief and fear and regret and gratitude and hope and joy. It's all there in the mix, in the stew beneath the surface of chronological time. Something is happening in a similar way in our text for today. We are witnessing the transition of leadership from one great prophet to another, from Elijah to Elisha. And what's interesting is, from a chronological perspective, we are giving no hint that this is about to happen. It literally appears out of nowhere. Sometimes that's how life happens. This transition is just thrust upon Elijah and Elisha, and yet in this very short passage, we're given an opportunity to see there are multi-layers and dimensions to what's going on. There is great depth and meaning and subtlety and a lot of unanswered questions. Consider what Elijah and Elisha are going through, the mixture of emotions here. Elijah has served as Elisha's mentor and companion and spiritual father, and he's probably thinking, what's going to happen with me? How am I going to continue to live on, to carry on this prophetic ministry without my mentor? And Elijah, for reasons that we don't completely understand, wants to go ahead alone without Elisha. Twice he tries to get rid of him. What's going on with Elijah? What's going on beneath the surface with him as he prepares to depart the work and this life? But Elijah refuses to let him go, to let him out of his sight. He wants to stay with his mentor every step of the way. And again, we're left wondering why. Why not let Elijah have his moment? And then to add to these questions, look at the places and imagery that the author chooses to focus on, places that are loaded with meaning and significance for any Jew. Bethel, Jordan, Jericho, places of revelation. And the images point to deep time, passing the mantle, crossing the sea, experiencing the whirlwind. The author is giving voice to the reality that when we are going through transitions, words often fail, but images and metaphor can speak more deeply to what is happening below the surface. Transitions are often liminal spaces, a concept developed by Victor Turner, who studied initiation and rituals in ancient societies. The word liminal comes from the Latin limen, which means threshold, which is the space between two rooms. It is a betwixt and between space. When we are at the threshold, we're no longer in the old room, and we're not yet in the new room. And the only thing we know is that we don't know. We don't know what the new room is going to be like. We don't know what the new chapter is going to be like. We don't know what the new season of our lives will be like. And while we like to believe in the illusion that we are in control, when we are in liminal space, we realize, we're not. We're not. But as uncomfortable as liminal space is, and it is every time, if we can stay open and receptive at the threshold, something new and creative can happen. If we can stay present to Kairos, it can give direction, depth, and purpose to Chronos. And a simple prayer that has helped me, that has helped many during these liminal places, is this: God, help me be expectant without expectations. Help me be expectant, to look for the new thing without expectations, without insisting it has to be this way or that way. A school teacher who worked as a driving instructor developed a meaningful way to help his students stay present to Kairos in the midst of Chronos, as part of their preparation in getting a driver's license, which is a pretty big moment for any adolescent. So this school teacher would take them out on the road to not only teach them how to drive, but also to talk to them about their life. And he'd draw parallels between driving a vehicle on the highway and moving along the highway of life. And he'd ask questions like, so what's your destination? Which road are you going to take? And who will you travel with as you journey on? And then when the big day came, when they were ready to receive the driver's license, he developed a ritual of the car keys. He would wait by the car, he'd hold the keys in his hand, and he would say, these are the keys to your life. What do these keys represent to you? And the adolescents would invariably say, freedom! And yeah, they represent freedom, right? I can finally go where I want to go, and I don't need to ask mom and dad for the keys anymore. But then he'd ask, what else do they represent? And that was more difficult, and most adolescents couldn't find the word, and so he would help them. He would say, they also mean responsibility. Responsibility. And if I give you these keys, I'm saying that society now trusts you to drive carefully, wisely, and passionately. Are you ready for the keys? And if they weren't, and if they needed to think about it, he wouldn't give them to them. And if they were ready, he would pass on the keys to them. And the students never forgot this experience, because it wasn't simply an experience of Chronos. It was an experience of Kairos. And it's got me thinking, how might we, as families, as a community of faith, help develop meaningful ways to help us stay open to the Kairos moments in the midst of transitions, particularly hard ones? How can we create space in worship in small groups in this community to help people ponder and reflect upon life and ask the right questions, the big questions? How can we help each other savor the experiences when they're happening? How can we create places where we can help each other stay present to the challenges, be open to the opportunities, and learn as we walk through these transitions and then integrate those learnings into the rest of our life to help each other not skim over the surface of the depths of the life we're living? There are so many transitions in life that have such depth and meaning. A daughter's first period, a son's first time shaving, a child's first cell phone, driving our child to college, as some of you will be doing in a short time, moving into a new community or a new neighborhood, finalizing your divorce, taking the keys from your parent who no longer has the mental capacity to drive, bringing in hospice into your family, becoming an adult child who no longer has any living parents. These are all enormously complicated transitions, fraught with a mixture of emotions, often seemingly in conflict with each other. And these transitions bring real change to not only individuals, but to family systems and to communities and churches. And they require the presence and the support and the encouragement of one another. For we really are leaving one room, and we're not yet in the new one. And these are frightening places, and we can help each other to make those transitions. So what transition are you going through? Or what transitions are you going through? Are you learning how to be retired? All my life I've been working. I've seen my identity as what I do, my job, and now I don't know who I am. Or maybe your kids have gone off to school and you're looking at your spouse and you go, who are you? I don't know who you are anymore. Or maybe your children are partnering up now and you're not so sure. I don't know about her. I'm worried. Or maybe you're noticing that your mind is just not as sharp anymore and you kind of know where that may lead and it's scary. Or maybe you have this deep need. You know that you only have so much time and you want to make a difference. You want to do something and you don't know what to do. What are the transitions? The answer to that question may be very obvious today. It may be very subtle, and you may not receive clarity today. Be open to whatever comes. But as you get in touch with whatever it is that goes on, be present to it. Be present to the fullness of the experience, the grief and the gratitude, the fear and the joy, the regret and the hope. And consider how you might be open to the opportune moment present in liminal space. How you might be ready to see the new thing and to act maybe in new ways. Try to resist the temptation to stay on the surface. Trust the call to go just a little deeper, only as deep as you're comfortable going. But go a little deeper than you might be inclined to go. And learn from the prophet Elisha, who was bold enough to ask God for what he wants. I want a double portion of the Spirit. And who was wise enough to know that grief was part of that experience as he tore his clothes into two pieces and be humble enough to acknowledge, Lord, I don't know where you are. Where are you? Because in liminal space, we can't see as clearly. And that's part of why those transitions are so hard. And like Elisha, be prepared for the unexpected and the luminous or mysterious. Events and experiences which are rich with meaning and symbolism waiting to be discovered. And remember that while it is God who parts the sea, you and me, we have a part to play. So even as you pray, where are you, Lord? Don't forget to pick up the mantle and strike the water. For we all have something that we can do in transition. And ask God for the grace to be expectant without expectations.